I'll just say a few words to introduce Professor Ramadan to you, not that he needs an introduction. Professor Tariq Ramadan has famously been quoted as saying, "I am Swiss by nationality, Muslim by religion, Egyptian by memory." And this is entirely reflective of an educational background that includes an MA in philosophy and French literature and a PhD in Arabic and Islamic studies from the University of Geneva. In Cairo, Professor Ramadan received one-to-one intensive training in classic Islamic scholarship from Al-Azhar University scholars. A justly celebrated, if at times controversial, academic career has included a professorship of Islamic studies and philosophy at Freiburg University in Switzerland. He was professor of religious conflict at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, a post from which he resigned after his visa was revoked. And he was also senior research fellow at the Lakahi Foundation in London. Today, Professor Ramadan holds the chair of contemporary Islamic studies in the Faculty of Oriental Studies at Oxford University. He is also a research fellow of St Antony's College and also teaches at the university's Faculty of Theology. His other posts include a visiting professorship at the Faculty of Islamic Studies in Qatar, a senior research fellowship at Doshisha University in Japan, and he's also a visiting professor of philosophy at Mundiapolis University in Morocco. Through his writings and lectures, Professor Ramadan has become a world-leading authority in issues concerning Muslims in the West and the Islamic revival in the Muslim world. He's active both at the academic and grassroots levels, lecturing extensively throughout the world on theology, ethics, social justice, ecology and interfaith, as well as intercultural dialogues. And Professor Ramadan is also president of the European think tank European Muslim Network in Brussels. His books, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, include Radical Reform, Islamic Ethics and Liberation, published in 2008, What I Believe, published in 2009, and most recently, The Quest for Meaning, Developing a Philosophy of Pluralism, which was published in 2010. On a lighter note, a recent article in The Guardian tells of Professor Ramadan's global following, particularly among European young Muslims, and how CDs of his lectures sell like pop music. According to Time magazine, and a poll for Prospect, he is one of the world's 100 greatest thinkers, and some even see him as a Martin Luther King figure for the 21st century. But don't shoot him, please. In his book, What I Believe, Professor Ramadan comments on the tag of controversial intellectual that he has acquired in recent years. What this means, he comments, is not quite clear, but in effect, everyone admits that a controversial intellectual is one whose thought does not leave people indifferent. Some praise it, others criticize it, but in any case, it causes them to react and think. So I'm sure that today's lecture will give us plenty to think about and argue over with regards to the question of Europe, Islam and pluralism. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honour to be able to introduce Professor Tariq Ramadan to you this evening.
Thank you for this invitation this evening and for your introduction, long one. I'm not going to comment on that and just try to go straight to some of the points that I want to make this evening about the critical question of Europe and pluralism and identities. Can I just ask you maybe to come closer to one another, because like this we don't have people standing up. It could be just a question of it will be warmer. And even if people are coming late, they can just come and sit. Thank you. Lots of room here, I know it's difficult. Please try your best to come closer, and here there are room, you can sit here. Just come here. Okay. Let me Is that okay? Okay, let me start with an introduction with three main points about what we are witnessing in Europe, in the European countries. And by the way, it's not only in the European countries. If you go to the United States of America, you will find some of the common challenges around. And even if you go to Africa, to Asian countries, once again, the question of identity, the question of defining oneself, to try to understand in which world we are living and how do we deal with pluralism, is an international, universal question now. It's not an easy one, and we are facing what I, in the book, what I believe, but also in the last one, developing the philosophy of pluralism, I call trust identity crisis. Because I think that this is what we are witnessing today. And when it comes to this identity crisis, it's important to come to the historical dimension, the causes, and to try to find solutions, and in which way every one of us as citizens, as human beings, as a member of structured societies, we have to be involved in the discussion. So my talk this evening is not only a theoretical discussion about how it is good to deal with pluralism, is what should be our personal commitment, because it takes effort to live with people coming from different horizons. It's not an easy way to define ourself, our own identity, but it's not easy to deal with people coming with different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds and religious backgrounds. And as we know, when I have been also dealing over the last 25 years in interfaith dialogue, it's not easy. It's easy when you know the people, when you try to reach out the surrounding society. You understand that it's easy. You are dealing with mindsets, you are dealing with mentalities, you are dealing with psychology, and you are not only dealing with rules. It's not an objective discussion. It's a very subjective way of dealing with this discussion. So as for the Western countries and the European countries now, and from where I'm coming, you got other lectures on all this discussion about identity, but when it comes to Europe and the Muslim presence, over the last 20 years, we have something which is clearly the question of Islam in Europe, the Islamic question, with the new Muslim presence. By the way, it's a new Muslim presence. It's not the first time, because the Muslims have been involved in the construction of the European identity in the Middle Ages. And up to the Enlightenment, if you are serious about discussing the European history and the European memory, you understand that Islam is not alien to Europe. That's not true. So I think I don't want to come to this. I just want to talk about the new Muslim presence and to say that today the question of Islam in the European societies is crossing all, it's a transnational phenomenon. You can't go to any European society without getting the question. What about Islam and what about the Muslim? Citizens or residents or immigrants? It depends. And by the way, you have to differentiate the status. The discussion about Islam is very often connected to immigration, immigrants. And it's not the reality of it. You have millions of Europeans who are now European citizens. They are Europeans, as I am a European. And I'm always saying, you quoted the thing, I'm adding now dimensions to my identity. I'm Swiss by nationality, Egyptian by memory, European by culture, Universalist by principles, Moroccan by adoption. I'm adding. So there are things that, yes, when you like a country, you can just take it as part of you, and no one can deny the right for you to do so. So I think here it's important to get an understanding of this very loaded discussion about pluralism. On the one side, what we have now in the Anglo-Saxon societies is people coming and questioning what we call the multicultural model. It's failing. You have heard recently the Prime Minister Cameron saying it's failing, it's not working, the Muslims are self-segregating themselves, it's not working, we don't have a unified society. Angela Merkel, a few weeks before, was saying exactly the same. The multiculti is failing. So we have a perception that something is going wrong in our societies. At the same time, on the other side of the political spectrum, of the model, the social model spectrum, you have the French society. And the French society saying, oh, multiculturalism is exactly what should not be done. This is the negative model. Why? Because we are, the Anglo-Saxon model is perceived as accepting the religious and cultural community to live together and not putting as a primary element of your belonging to the society the fact that you are a citizen and you are an individual. So you are perceived as belonging to a community, which is not what the French model is all about. On the other side, so in the name of the l'unité de la République, the unity of the Republic, what you have is now in France saying it doesn't work either. Integration doesn't work, it is not working. And we took as an example, for example, what happened in 2005. In 2005, you had the riots in the suburbs in France. We say, look, what is happening there is just to show how much this model is not succeeding, integration is failing. And in 2005, after the riots, and now you have, for example, the Front National, the Front National is the populist party saying, look at these Muslims, now they are praying in the streets. It shows that they are colonizing us. And by the way, you get this kind of statements, and this is now the first party, according to the last surveys in the country. Marine Le Pen, the daughters of Jean-Marie Le Pen, is now leading even before and ahead of Sarkozy. So this is what we have in Europe. This new presence is sending back a question of who are we? And what are these new people and these new citizens in our society? And we are dealing with loaded concepts. Integration is a loaded concept. On the other side, multiculturalism now is a loaded concept. Behind these discussions about what is integration, what is a multicultural society, you will find the very question of identity, who we are and how do we define ourselves. So I think that we have to inductively come to the deep question here when we are dealing with this. So in my view, I'm not using, when I speak about our societies now, I'm not talking about multicultural society because it's a loaded term. I'm not talking about, you know, the republic and the unity of the republic. I'm just using an objective concept. Willing it or not, today we are dealing with something which is called pluralism. We are in pluralistic society. Don't put any ideology, look at this room. This is the multiculturalist society, the pluralistic society of today. It's people coming from different backgrounds, different religions, different cultures, but with the same status. You are citizens or you are residents and you are building this society. Britain is a pluralistic society. That's it. Now, how we are going to deal with this, how we are going to come back to us, to ourselves, we are going to define ourselves. This is how we are going to define the we. That should be the future of our common future. What I call in a manifesto that I published in the what I believe, a manifesto for a new we. We, it's us, building, shaping, constructing a future society where we are acknowledging the fact that we are coming from different backgrounds with the same status. We have common principles and common hopes. And I think that this is the starting point of the discussion. Now, the second thing which is important when it comes to this is very often, and it was not in the British discussion, the discussion on citizenship was not the usual one. Well, very often when we were in the French system, in Belgium, in France, in Africa even, one of the main concepts was citizenship. Citizenship is what makes you a member of a structured society. So citizenship was quite clear. When you get the nationality, when you are French, in a French society, it means that you have the status and you have the equal rights with all the other citizens. When, after a while, the discussion came in Britain, it started with how do we define, nationality and citizenship? that you have to understand who we are and how is the status that you get. There are objective parameters to define what is a citizen. Then you get the nationality, when you are acknowledged as a member of the society. So this is where you should have equal rights with others. So this is something which is an objective dimension of citizenship. But now we have a problem. We have a problem, why? Because this was very easy when we were dealing with homogeneous culture. So people are coming mainly from the same horizons. Still, over the years, remember, I'm born in Switzerland. I was born in Switzerland. I have been raised there. When I was there, I was very much involved in sports, in football, and the people who were perceived as the foreigners were mainly Italian and Spanish. And the perception it was, oh, these immigrants, they are coming and take our bread and colonizing us. Now it's laughable now for me to see that when I go to Spain sometimes, I hear in to the Spanish citizens exactly the same they are saying about Moroccans and about Asian and African people. So, the victims of racism yesterday are not prevented from nurturing racist sentiments today. Your past never protect you from being, the oppressor when yesterday you were the victims. But the point for me is this one, is that it was there. The Polish people in France were perceived as too much Catholic to be able to integrate into France. Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian people coming to Switzerland were understood as the immigrants that were not really part of it. But the process over 2 generations was a success. Why? Because the perception is, okay, they are immigrants, but still we are sharing values and cultures. They are still Europeans. What is new now is the new immigrants are no longer coming from within. They are coming from Africa. They are coming from Muslim majority countries. So there is a difference. The capacity of the rules to integrate people from other European culture now is challenged. The rules are questioned because the cultures are too different and the religions are different. So the question is, even though you are a European Muslim citizen, a Muslim British citizen, a Muslim German citizen, or a French Muslim citizen, whatever, in fact, your citizenship is questioned because of the Muslim factor. And this is something that I have been myself facing every time. When, for example, I was dealing with the populist leader of the first party in my country, Switzerland. You heard about this minarets discussion about to ban the minarets in Switzerland. This is coming from the Swiss National Party. The Swiss People Party, sorry. The Swiss People Party, they were launching something which is, we don't want minarets in our country. We today have 4 minarets in the country. And they were saying it's a silent colonization. And we were all surprised that they won. And they won the case because they were nurturing fear in the country. But the point was that when I was talking to him in a primetime TV program in Switzerland just before this referendum on the merits, he told me, looking at me, he said, you know what? We made a mistake with you. I said, what mistake did you have? Did you make? He said, we gave you the nationality. Meaning by this, that the fact that I am a Muslim, I'm too much a Muslim to be a true citizen. So even though I have the citizenship and I was born in the country, my citizenship is questioned because of my religion. So this is new. This is a factor which is very new, which is the religious factor. And the cultural factor is questioning the objectivity of what it means to be a citizen. So while the objective factors are here, I speak French, I was born there, I got the nationality, still I am questioned. There is a doubt about my citizenship. And this doubt means that now we can't only go for objective factors of citizenship, you have to add psychological factor and cultural factor. And if you don't get this, you're not going to understand the discussion, and you're not going to confront appropriately what is coming from the far-right parties and the populists. Because the populists are not talking about laws. The populists are talking about feelings and perceptions and fear and mistrust. So if you don't confront this at that level, you can come with the law and say, okay, look, I'm a citizen. Say, yes, but not a true one. What are you going to say when you are perceived as not a true one? And say, okay, my passport is not enough. Yes, but. And after the but, anything is possible. But listen to this. It's a very critical discussion here because it has to do with the definition of your identity. What it means to be a Swiss when just after July the 7th here in this country, 2005. What was the first question that we had? What is Britishness? Is this an objective discussion? Or is it a subjective discussion about the perception of who is truly British? Because these people who did this on the margin of the Muslim community, on the margin, they were not even within the Muslim community, they were not coming to mosques, they were gathering in gyms. On the margin of the Muslim community, these people were born and raised in Britain. And they were British. So what is Britishness when some British Muslims are attacking their fellow British citizens? This is the point. So you have a tension on identity. And this is a question that you cannot just avoid. All the people who think that it's enough to be open-minded to solve the problem, it's the problem starting. We start with the problem. When you think that you're open-minded, that you don't have to face the mistrust of the people, the fears of the people, that you don't acknowledge that the people are scared and they have questions, that some of them are legitimate questions. Of course there are legitimate questions. When you have people born and raised in your country and they attack you by saying, you are killing us in Iraq, so we are going to kill you in the streets here in London, say, wow. So who is this you? And who is this we? And who is this us you are talking about? The us versus them. It's a question. This is the starting point of the discussion. So I think here that we have to take this really psychological factor into account. And mainly I'm dealing with this. And all the discussion about identity has to do with this. Objective features and psychological dimensions. You have to deal with this, a balanced approach. And you have to listen to the people. Identity is also to listen to what the people have to say. Not only to say, you know, we are all the same, and it's not enough to come with statements. It's important to come with an educational process to deal with mentalities. And I think that this is part of the discussion. Now, who are the people today who are putting all of us in a situation where it's very dangerous? Because this discussion, if you don't tackle all these dimensions, and you just come with, very with good sentiments and open heart, and you are not tackling the issues with all this in depth and dimensions, you are going to be lost. We are today dealing with political parties that are very quick. You know, for example, let me tell you something. As a Muslim, I'm coming from the reformist tradition. I'm not representing all the Muslims. So I'm coming from the reformist tradition. And when I'm talking about controversial intellectuals within the Muslim communities, I'm controversial because I'm targeting, sometimes criticizing the literalists by saying the way you read the Quran is problematic. The problem is not in the Quran, the problem is in your mind. The problem is in the readers, that sometimes you are reducing the Quran into something which is not the overall message. So you are dealing with Muslims and you are dealing with some readings, and at one point it's important to understand that when, as a reformist, I have to contextualize the verses, I have near to me people who don't do that. They just quote the verse and go straight to the conclusion. So when you have a discussion, you try to explain and they go straight to the conclusion. If you are in trouble, the first to go straight to the conclusion will be more powerful than you trying to explain that you have to contextualize and look, it's complex. I say, yes, it's complex. No, it's black and white. This is it. It's very difficult. When you have simplistic approaches, it's very quick to get the people's attention if they don't think with the mind, but react with the emotions. Emotional reactions are very quick with simplistic statements.
and this is where we are all in danger. Democracy with simplistic statements is the end of democracy because it's the end of dialogue, it's the end of debates. It's the starting point of very simplistic black and white attitude. And who is very powerful today? Who are the political parties that are powerful today? The populists. And be careful, I wrote an article on this because I think that all this discussion about identity it's politicized and it's exploited. And we also need to get this other dimension. So not to be only simplistic by saying, oh, it's a good discussion about identity. Some are directing us towards identity because they don't want to deal with politics. It's a strategic distraction. A political strategic distraction. Talk about identity and forget about power and politics, while it's all there. So I don't want us to come to a discussion by being simplistic. You know, the last book, The Quest for Meaning, I dedicated the book to the semicolon. Yes, my friend the semicolon. I have a personal relationship with it. Why? Because it's a universal punctuation mark, helping us to understand in one sentence, when you have two propositions, it means it's a complex sentence. Yes? And between the two propositions, there is a semicolon. It's a reconciliation with complexity. And complexity, it's important. Why? Because this is where, when you deal with complexity, you learn to be humble. Intellectual humility is the starting point of pluralism. Intellectual humility is where you start to deal with pluralism, because you understand that you don't get it all, that you have to listen to people to give you something and to give them something. This is the starting point of a positive dynamic between identities, a positive dynamic. It starts with intellectual humility to be able to get from the other and to get with the other to propose something and to build something for the future. So when I was dealing with, over the last few years, what I see everywhere, even in this country, things that were yesterday said by far-right parties or populists are now said by traditional politicians. When it comes to portraying the other, or the immigrants, or the Muslims, we are normalizing the populist discourse in a way which is very dangerous. And let me tell you something to describe this. We have to be very cautious. Not all the populist parties are far-right parties. You know, this rhetoric on xenophobia or on far-right parties that are close to fascism, they are not all like this. But when all the fascists and the far-right parties are populist, not all the populists are far-right. You have a trend today of populists that are everywhere and they are gaining ground. Why? Because they have four features. And we have to deal with them when it comes to talk about identity, to talk about Muslims today, which is the question of Islam in Europe. The first one is very simplistic responses to complex issues. So it's you listen to political parties everywhere, for example in my country, or here the BNP in the UK, or the Front National in France, or Get Wilders in the Netherlands, all the far-right parties in Swedish, the Swedish political landscape. You listen to what they are saying. And what they are saying is very simple. Is, you know what? You know why we have economic problems? We have marginalization, violence in our streets. It's very easy, because they are coming in. So, unemployment, they are taking them. Something which is very, very old, it's not new. When, for example, we had exactly the same with, as I told you, Spanish and Italian, it's coming back now with the same rhetoric. We have a problem in our society, and all these problems about drugs, prostitution, they are responsible. So very simplistic perception of what are the causes of our problems, socioeconomic problems. They are. So you target a specific people. Yesterday, they were European immigrants. Now it's a transnational reality, all Muslims. Yesterday, we were talking about Bangladeshi or Pakistani or Turkish people, or now all Muslims. Islam is coming. And this is exactly the discussion. It's exactly what we have, that what yesterday was a nationality, today is a religion. And the religion with the religion is, oh, we don't know who they are. For example, listen to, it's even happening in the States. For years I was saying what is happening in the States is not going to happen here. What is happening here is not going to happen in the States because the relationship with immigration is not the same. And Professor Sherman Jackson in the States was saying something which was very true. Then I listened to this. I say, it's very interesting. You heard that in the States, this was the first African American to be elected as a president. And it was great. It means that the United States of America are going beyond racism against African Americans. So he was saying, you know what, today, after he was elected as the first African American president, meaning, yes, there is something which is we are going beyond racism in the state. By the way, be careful. When we have a symbol, sometimes the symbol is hiding what is behind. The reality African American citizen is still the reality of discrimination. It's not because you have a president that is all going well. But the neoconservative trends that were against him on the Republican side and all these tea parties that we heard of in the States, you know what they are saying now about him? They're not saying African American, because African American is an American now. You can't say you're not. He's part of the trend. You know what they say? He is a crypto-Muslim. 20% of the Americans still think that he's a Muslim. While just before the election, he had a problem with his priests who taught him Islam. No, it's not possible. Just before, what he was saying was, we had a problem with his priest who was having very harsh statements about the American policy. And then now what is added to this, it's an Arab, not an African American. So if in the United States of America now you are an Arab or suspected Arab and suspected Muslim, this is why you are the other. So you are not really American. So you can't say about him now. They are not using this rhetoric by saying African American, they are saying something else, which is what we heard over the last 4 months now in the States, is the Islamization of America. Be careful, there is a trend of Islamizing America. And they are saying, look, he's not Barack Obama, he's Barack Hussein Obama. Remember, Hussein. So Hussein means that behind the scene. But why is it important? Because at the end of the day, he's a Christian, he's an American, he's an African American. And then behind this, it's all the psychological factor which is important. Changing the lens through which you look at him, to create the other, to build the image of the other. And Islam is somewhere, and the Islamic factor is somewhere. We have exactly the same in Europe. Exactly the same, that we are building the other, creating, shaping this. And how do they operate? And this is where I think it's important in our discussion. The 4 factors, the 4 characteristics that we have with the populist party. The first one is, as I told you, simplistic answer to complex question. This is dead. You target a specific group of people. The second is a binary vision, us versus them. When you create the other, it's them, it's not us. So they might be citizens, but still, as I told you, as Muslims and as previous immigrants, they are not among us. So we have to protect ourselves from their colonization, a binary mind. And this is all what I'm saying. In the book, when I have been also, as I said, in the interfaith dialogue, I say, you know, the Christians and the Jews and the Buddhists and the Hinduists and the Confucianist tradition, my problem is not with the open-minded that are ready to dialogue. Even in my community, as a Muslim, in my community, the more difficult reality for me and the problems that I have are with the dogmatic minds. And the dogmatic minds are not exclusivist minds. The dogmatic minds are always binary minds. You know what? I'm right. So there is only one conclusion. You are wrong. This is the dogmatic mind is like this, binary. It's I'm right, so you are wrong. It's us versus them. And this is it's very easy to be a dogmatic mind. with your emotion. Your emotion, when you are overwhelmed with your emotion, you listen less and you judge more. This is the reality also of a dogmatic mind. And I think that the populists are working on this binary vision of the reality. And it works because this is very protective. It helps you to define who is the other. So simplistic response to complex questions. Second, binary vision of the reality. Third one, which is now starting with something which we all share. Our world today is in danger of transforming every one of us as a victim. So we are the victims of these people who are coming to our country. We are victims of this silent colonization. We are all victims. A world of victims is not a world of responsible subject of their history. We are just on the defensive. So all the rhetoric of the populist is to nurture this defensiveness, that we have to be cautious with these people. They are coming. All what we, for example, how can you build a rhetoric on people coming and saying, oh, we have a problem with integration, with all the statistics shown, for example, in this country, in the UK, that the people who went for 7-7, they were a handful number of people, completely on the margin, and to them, all the Muslims were questioned as for their belonging to the country. So we were saying these people are acting against Islam. Muslims were saying this. And day in, day out, we were asked, you have to condemn them. We condemn them, but still the perception is all the Muslims are a problem if some Muslims are doing so. And this is the question of this perception that we are the victims of this present. So this third dimension, and listen to this because it's important. When I'm dealing with Muslims talking about identity, there is something which is a very negative factor, is when you define yourself as a victim of, oh, they don't like Islam, they don't like us, so you nurture a victim mentality. And when you nurture a victim mentality, you are not responsible. You are the victims of the other. The other are doing this to you. And you have on the other side exactly the same. In the West, oh, all these immigrants, all what is happening. Look at what we said after the revolutions and the uprising in Tunisia and in Egypt. Oh, they are going to come to us. They are going to colonize us. They are going to leave the country. It's as if not happy to see all these people calling for freedom. We are scared about our security. Us versus them again, and victims. And the fourth dimension, and the last one, is emotional politics. That we don't talk about policies, about social justice, about how do we deal with unemployment. We talk about very simplistic, emotional thing. It's mistrust, fears. It's based on fears. So what I'm saying is that I acknowledge the fact that my fellow citizens are scared, and they are legitimate questions. But when you have political parties using these fears to build emotional politics on identity, this is a danger for all of us. Because they are using something which is legitimate to make it a political, powerful means to get and to win the next election. And it's happening everywhere now, everywhere. When you have people, for example, look, 1.5 million books sold in Germany, with someone who is writing a book, Thilo Sarrazin, saying that the presence of the Muslims and the Turkish Muslims in Germany is lowering the level of the German intelligence. Such a great book. Look at this. You get money by making it, and you get support, and the people are buying, and they are buying these thoughts. And I think it's important for us to understand that. So this context is where we are talking about identity. And I would say that we have to be very cautious not to be simplistic and not to be only full of goodwill. We are dealing with very strong forces. And this discussion on identity is a very loaded one. And this is why we have to come with clear answers. So as I still have 12 minutes, let me come to some proposals. I'm trying to be very Swiss. The first thing that I wanted to say here is really to understand that at the European level, when we speak about national identity, you can't only think today that it's only a national discussion. That's not true. Now we are living in a global world, so it's national and international. Some of the questions that we are dealing with in Europe have to do with what is happening in the Middle East, for example. Some of the discussion have to do with the global reality. So don't think that we are only talking about national identity, even as if we are only talking within our society. It's connected to many other things. And I will give you an example just later. But the first thing is, when it comes to domestic discussion, there are three dimensions that are important. First, as I said, when it comes to our society, the first is citizenship. We have to define what do we mean by citizenship. Who is a member of our society? The second is about identity. So identity is adding the psychological factor to the objective factors of citizenship. Identity is there. And the third dimension is the future of our society and immigration. Because all the discussion that we have now on identity are connected in one way or another with immigration. We are scared of immigration. And we are scared because we can't just let the people come in. And intellectually speaking, that's right. You cannot just say, let the people come in and we'll help them because they are facing, social problems and political problems in the countries of origin. Still, we are saying this, but we have a problem is that we know that we will never survive, economically speaking, in Europe without them. So we have a problem. The problem is we don't like them culturally speaking. We don't want them. We think that we cannot deal with them, but at the same time, we need them. For example, the day before yesterday, the French Marine Le Pen went to Tunisia, to this island where the Tunisians are in Italy, and say, I know, I would like to help you, but I can't. We can't just let you in. With my heart, I say yes. With my mind, I say I can't. And she went back to France to explain with her heart, very populist. This is emotional politics. I would like, but I can't. And this is she's not talking about the reality of the future, that there is no survival in France if we don't have immigrants. So for the time being, what we do, we want them underground, we let them be exploited because we don't have the courage to say we need a policy towards immigration. Now there are immigrants exploited because they are underground, they are not legal in the country. And all the societies are doing this. All the society. We don't have the courage to say this is what we need and this is what we have to face. And how are we going to deal with this? Because we are scared of the feelings of the people, what is going to be their reaction in the next election. So identity, citizenship first, identity, and then immigration and the future. On the international scene, as I said, it's important to understand that something is happening in Europe, which is the problem. You know what is said, for example, in the United States of America? The United States of America, some trends, the neoconservative, and some of the pro-Israeli groups, and this is something that we have to understand, are saying there is a problem in Europe. Europe is becoming Arabia. Arabia means the Arabs, the immigrants, are taking over. And they are changing the European policies towards the Middle East. You know what? In 1967, 73% of the Europeans were supporting Israel. Now, 67% of the Europeans are sensible and sensitive to the Palestinian cause. Things are changing. And you can't just be naive by saying, oh, that's just history. No, people are acting on the political ground by saying, this presence of the Muslim presence in Europe is changing Europe. It's dangerous because the foreign policy is going to change. And I got this at the highest level of the European Parliament by saying people were coming to me, European parliamentarians, telling me, you should know who is creating the problem with you now. Because your discourse on what is happening in the Middle East is not liked by some of the European politicians here. Because you are changing the European strategy. You have to think about this. This presence has a political impact on international issues. If you think it's only coming from within, you don't get it. It's coming at different levels. And we have to deal with this. So the question of identity sometimes is the way to put in identity terms something which is to be dealt with in political terms, but as I said, political and strategic distraction. Speak about identities in order not to speak about the true political discussion. So let me come to my conclusion now when it comes to these elements. From within, and this is what I want to highlight here. If you look at the reality of the Muslim presence now, it's clear that we have the reality of a Muslim European identity today. It's there. And what I'm saying in many of the books, I think, in fact, if you want to be a citizen in the country, if you want to speak objectively about citizenship, you need to have 3 L's. The first one is to have to abide by the law of the country. And all the governments that I have been meeting, 24 so far in Europe, for example, they all say, even here after July the 7th, here in this country, the great majority of the Muslims are abiding by the law. We don't have a problem with them. We don't have a problem with, they abide by the law. So their identity as citizens is to abide by the law of the country. Second, the language. They should speak the language of the country. And that's true. My identity cannot be achieved as a citizen if I don't speak the language of the country. Almost all the British Muslims or the French Muslims or the German Muslims are speaking English as you speak English, French as the French are speaking French, and German as they speak the language of the country. So they are part of the society. And then the third dimension, loyalty. 3L, loyalty. It's very important. What is loyalty? Loyalty is I belong to this country and I want the best for this country because my kids are going to stay here. And then you have the figures coming from the Gallup survey showing that, for example, the German Muslims feel much more German than the average Muslim, the average citizens feel German. 83% of the Muslim Germans feel German, while 63% of the German would say, yes, I feel German. Wow. So the Muslims are feeling more German than the German? Exactly the same in the UK, the same in France. Not that they are, but the level, the percentage of the Muslims feeling that they are loyal to the country is raising. So they feel that they are at home in their country. They feel German, they feel British, they feel French, they feel Swedish. They are at home. So this is a very important point. When you feel at home, you get the third dimension here, which is a psychological dimension, which is sense of belonging, that you belong to the country. So this is something that has to be nurtured, and it's a very important point in our discussion. But having said that, the main problems when it comes to our discussion on the political ground, and when it comes about this discussion about identity, it means that in fact, this identity factor that as a Muslims you cannot be a true British or a true German, it's not the right way of putting things. The problem that we have are still the very old problem of socio-economic integration. They have nothing to do with religion. They have nothing to do with culture. They have to do with unemployment, class divisions, and segregation, geographical segregation. For example, when the people came at the beginning from India, from Pakistan in Britain, or when they came from Algeria or Tunisia or Morocco in France, they were put in suburbs because it was good for both of them. For the people who are coming, stay together. This is for you. This is a geographical area for you. And for the welcoming society, we don't want to see them. We want their jobs. We want them to work, but we don't want them to be visible. We thought that one day they would go back home. But the kids came, and the kids got out of the ghetto. And now they are visible everywhere in the mainstream. This is the same here in the UK. So the problem here is that this geographical segregation produced something which in socioeconomic terms, the reality of job discriminations, housing discriminations, the reality that needs social policies, not cultural policies. The point is, are we ready to speak about equal citizenship and equal opportunities and to have schools? For example, I don't think that private Muslim or religious schools are the solution for the future. I don't think, I was myself going to a mainstream school system, and this is where I got to deal with people. But that's all good. But when you come to the UK, and when you go to the States, and when you go to some areas, and you see that the people are segregated, you may be the Prime Minister saying you are self-segregating yourself, but who put them there? Who is giving them these second-class schools now not to be able to come to the mainstream? Because at the end of the day, we have segregated schools with 90% of the people coming with the same background, and we want them to enter into the mainstream while the whole process is to discriminate them in second-class schools. We have to come with a school policy, an educational policy which is giving equal opportunities, and to stop talking about this integration business. What I'm saying now, it's high time for us to go to a post-integration discourse, which has to do with contribution, which has to do with this sense of belonging, that you are giving value. We are doing this in two fields. And Muslims don't have a problem in two fields. Their identity is not questioned in two fields. The first one is football and sports. Not a problem. In France, you play football at the highest level, no one is going to ask you where do you come from, as long as you are good. Zinedine Zidane is French. It's French. Don't ask him, oh, are you an Algerian? Only when he did what he did was questioned as an Algerian. Because what the Algerian president said after he did this is, we are proud of you. So, okay. As an Algerian. The point here is that in sports and entertainment, culture, songs, all this we are not questioned. Because this is exotic and it's entertainment. But what we need now is to acknowledge the fact that there are contributions in all the other fields, within academia, here, in university, in journalism, in teaching, in everywhere. This contribution is important. For example, if you want to speak about my identity, I'm a Muslim, I'm a believer, I'm a practicing Muslim. 95% of the talks that I have to give or to deliver are about me not being a problem. I'm not a problem. I'm good. I'm kind. Don't be scared. But in fact, this is not the point. I should be able to speak about what are my questions as my philosophy and my spiritual contribution to me being a European. Because at the end of the day, what I'm helping the European countries and what the Muslims are helping the European countries to be is really to deal with this diversity of beliefs and cultures and aesthetics and arts and spirituality. At the end of the day, this is the true richness of a society. Not only to talk about the problems of us encountering each other, but to understand the very deep contribution in history, in arts, in spirituality. I very rarely am invited to come and to speak about the quest for meaning in my life and my spirituality. What does it mean to believe in one God? What does it mean to give meaning to my life, to protect the environment, to respect people? This is in fact who I am, and I'm very often asked to talk at the periphery of my identity, not at the center. We need a dialogue of the centers, not the dialogue of the peripheries. Not where we have a perceived problem, but when we have common discussion and common principles and common hopes. And this is why Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Confucianism are coming together. A philosophy of pluralism. What are the deep questions that we have? So I would say that at the periphery, we are not doing enough if we don't come to this discussion. And this is what I want to end with. Because we can sit here and blame the politicians, blame the populists, but we will have what we deserve if we are not critical with our own self. As students in a university, as professors in university, at the end, what I'm trying to teach. You know, I went to Rotterdam to say there was a connection between university and city. I think this is exactly what we need now. Is that our campuses, our universities should be connected. And you who are coming to lectures like this, at the end of the day, what is the most important thing is to get out of here with a sense of responsibility. If we are not going to be committed citizens, we'll have populists leading us towards fear, mistrust, and distraction on cultural and religious issues, and not on the fundamentals, where we are together, where we are this new we. And this is our responsibility. So my challenge to every single student, and every one of us is still a student in one way or in another. As citizens, we are students, is really to come with this sense of responsibility and say, okay, don't avoid your fears. Your fears are part of the process, but challenge them. Acknowledge that you have and take them to go to a step further, which is to encounter, to meet the people, to try to find a way to have this dialogue at the center. And this is where you build your identity. The worst thing that we are now facing is a reductive, negative identity because we are scared and we don't challenge our own fears. And this is where we have to come together, and this is where, in a discussion like this one, it's important to ask the critical questions to help us to go together to the next phase, which is contribution and living together with respect and not only with tolerance. Can I tell you something? I'm not going to let you tolerate me or accept me in a way where, is there someone in this room who would be happy to be accepted or tolerated? No. There is only one word that I know. I want to be respected as much as I am trying to respect myself. And to be respected is the starting point of this. To get it quite clearly. Any one of us here in this room is as complex as his or her neighbor. Complexity is the way you deal with others, that you acknowledge the fact that you are as complex as I am. And when two complex people are meeting, this is the starting point of respect. If not, it's colonization. It's colonization. This is exactly what we had in under colonization. There are the good and the bad. Very often we have this, are you a moderate or a fundamentalist? So what a question. When do you want to put me? A moderate or a binary vision of the other? And the colonizers, when they went to Africa, this is exactly the way they were defining the people. The bad and the good. You resist us, you are the bad. You accept us, you are the good. So please, don't try to tolerate your neighbor and your fellow citizen. Try to respect, and this is the best way to question your own identity and to get to understand the identities of the other, your neighbor and your fellow human being. Thank you.